Welcome to Playing with Perspective, the suspended animation podcast, where we hear real stories from real people and we tackle all sorts of fun topics in the areas of business, marketing, entrepreneurship, mindset, the arts, and, well, life itself. It's amazing what you will pick up. Thanks for joining us. Welcome, everybody. Darren Saul here, your host of Playing with Perspective, the suspended animation podcast. It's episode 201, and I have the fantastic Moein Varaei back in the studio. How you doing, Moein?
I'm well. You?
Very, very well. I'm very happy that you're taking the 201st spot.
It's great to be here. Great to be here.
And of course, thanks for coming. And of course, Moein was on the show many episodes ago. I call him our resident project manager. So he's here to teach everybody a little bit more about the art and science of project management. But the topic of today is everyone manages projects. Did you know that you're a project manager too? That's so true, because whether it's business or personal, we're always managing projects.
It's true. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Now, just for a little bit of an insight into Moein, for those of you who might not have seen the episode previously, he's the principal consultant of Global Empowering Solutions, a project management company dedicated to helping engineering projects achieve higher efficiency and profitability. So he helps engineers be better project managers. He has over 30 years of experience in master planning, design, construction, and project management of engineering projects that include road, utilities, airport infrastructure, bridges, tunnels, and metro systems. Moein is a chartered engineer and a registered professional engineer of Queensland. In his current role, he focuses on 4 key work streams: project management consulting services, policy and procedure writing services, training, and mentoring. So, Moein, you've been a busy guy working on lots of very interesting projects.
Absolutely, yes.
My God.
Man.
So again, welcome to the show. Really nice to have you back. And I'm looking forward to exploring a little bit more about what's been happening since you were last on the show and
Wonderful.
Enlightening everybody into the ins and outs of project management. But let's kick off by just giving us a little bit of a backstory and getting us familiar with your story and how you fell into this area, this space, and why you love it so much still after so many years.
Yeah, I mean, I actually love it because I love it when I'm able to help engineering firms, whether they're consultants or manufacturers or contractors, if I can help them with becoming more efficient or becoming more, they can turn their project to become more profitable, improve their profitability, or if I can help them reduce the stresses at their workplace, or if I can help them create an environment where their staff can thrive and be happy and feel valued and appreciated, then I know I'll get a kick out of that, basically. So because the reason I'm doing this is because I've actually seen that quite a lot, that people struggle with project profitability, project management, and so on. So I've seen a lot of construction projects, a lot of construction design work that have sort of gone pear-shaped. Yep. People, it's either, for example, the budget has been blown, or they're late in delivering, or the quality isn't as people expected. I'm sure some of your viewers can relate to that. I'm sure we've all seen it on the news every so often we hear about these mega-sized projects being late or their budgets have been blown. Maybe they were supposed to, the budget was, let's say, 5 billion. Now it's going to be 6.5 billion or something. So I'm sure all of us can relate to that kind of news that we've heard, that people try to explain why those things have happened. But basically it boils down to maybe poor planning or poor project management or something of similar nature that resulted in this increase in budget, or this the budget being blown. I've also seen designers, great designers, become project managers without appropriate training. Just because you're a great designer doesn't mean that you can be a good project manager. It's a little bit like saying, well, you're a great dentist, so why don't you become a heart surgeon?
Yep.
Just because you can do one well doesn't mean, yes, you're both maybe in the medical related industry, but
Yes.
really they're so specialized that you need to have the right skill set to do them. And as a result of people getting promoted into positions that they really haven't got the skill set for, we find that projects are mismanaged, or that people try to wing it, and that's not the best way to manage projects. And also projects end up in trouble, or they may end up in disputes and arbitration as a result of this kind of mismanagement. That, for example, the scope of work is left slightly vague when people are tendering, so in a tender,
That's right.
maybe the client has given you a detailed scope of work that you have to price, but then you have to make sure that when you're bidding, that you actually clarify what you are going to do and what you are not going to do. You can say, I'll do A, B, and C, but I won't do D, E, and F. So at least later on, if they ever want to do D, E, and F, then they have to pay you for it, and they have to give you the adequate amount of time to do it. So I've seen a lot of that going on, and there's an unnecessary amount of pressure and stress in our industry that is just unbelievable. And all of that is due to poor project management, poor planning, poor tracking, poor monitoring, and or poor team management. And so, as I said, I love it when I'm able to help them reduce the stresses of their workplace and to create an environment where their teams can thrive and the projects can also become a lot more profitable.
I love it. And it's so interesting. Like, as you're talking, two really interesting points come to mind. You mentioned that, not everybody has the skill set to be project manager. And exactly that. Like, there's so much promotion going on in the workplace, particularly with people that are good technically with whatever they're doing, and they're promoted to managers. There's a great example of, a very different type of skill set. Just because you can do something really well, it doesn't mean you're a great people manager. And it's very much the same with project management. Just because you can do something well doesn't mean you can handle a massive multi-million-dollar project. It's a very, very different ballgame and a different set of tools and skills you need.
Exactly.
And the other thing that's really fascinating to me is that, we almost expect projects to be over time and over budget. It's crazy. Like, unfortunately, we do. Like, we say, if they say 5 weeks, make it 10. If I say 5,000, make it 10. We always expect that. Isn't that fascinating?
Yes, it is. But that just sort of shows how much trust we have in that industry.
Yeah.
They're not, there's a lot of room for improvement.
Definitely. And of course, projects, the bigger the projects, the harder they are to manage, and, the more tools you need, and particularly now with software and all sorts of great applications that can be used for project management. But it can also make your life and your project and your work life much easier and much less stressful, and you can enjoy what you do rather than always be under the pump and, trying to work out what's fighting fires all day long.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. So let's kind of get into the main topic of today, which is everyone manages projects. And I know it's, quite general and it's kind of obvious, but a lot of people don't really think about that in that terms. So maybe let's expand on that a little. What do you mean when you say everyone is a project manager?
Well, that's true because, in almost every industry, many companies deliver projects, and because, they may not call it a project, they may call it a case, or they may call it an initiative or a campaign or something. Or they may call the manager not a project manager, but a case manager or a campaign manager or something. But in fact, if it's something that has got a beginning and an end, and it has an objective that you're trying to meet, and there's a series of tasks that you have to go through to reach that objective or to fulfill the requirements of that objective, then you have a project.
Absolutely.
And if you're managing that, then you're a project manager. In fact, that applies to your daily lives, as you referred to earlier as well. For example, if you're trying to travel to Europe, maybe you want to go to London, you want to go from Sydney to London. First of all, you have to figure out, when can I go without disturbing the rest of my life, that is the most convenient time for me to make that trip.
Yep.
How long do I have for that trip? And what's my budget for that trip? And do I want to go first class? Do I want to go, business class or coach or economy, And do I want the flight to have be direct flight to London, or do I want it to, or can I accept having stops in many countries along the way? And do I want to be on the airplane for that long? And what airline do I want to go on? Can I trust the airline not to be late? Because some airlines have got a reputation for constantly, either losing luggage or being late in taking off and all the rest of it. So,
yep.
And also, who's going to take you to the airport? Are you going to drive yourself and park at the airport, or is your partner going to drive you there? Are you going to, catch a taxi or Uber it? How are you going to?
And who's going to pick you up on the other side?
Exactly, and who's going to pick you up at the other side? And have you sort of arranged that? And
have you got a visa? And have you got the permit? And have you got this document and whatever else you need?
It actually happened to me. I got to the first time I traveled to a particular country. I didn't speak their language. I arrived at 10 o'clock at night, and somebody was meant to come and pick me up from the company that I was visiting, and they didn't turn up. So I was there with my suitcase, bags, and everything in a foreign land. Didn't know how to speak the language. Didn't know where I was supposed to stay the night. I knew I was being taken to a hotel, but their guy was supposed to take me to the hotel.
That's right.
So if you don't plan that, you're going to come back with an interesting story to tell.
That's right.
Long tale of woes that you can explain to everyone. So we are all project managers. So you have to plan the resources that you need, the time that you need, the people that are going to support you with that, the money that you require. So all those things need to be planned. And in engineering projects as well, and whether it's you're designing a bridge or a tunnel or a utility, whether it's sewerage, drainage, whatever it may be, you still need to think of all those things as well. How much budget do you have? What resources do you need? And and what is the time limit, a time frame that you have to do it in? In fact, they're a lot more serious because the consequences are much greater. If your bridge collapses, the bridge that you design or you construct collapses, then the risks are much greater than in your daily life, the things that you do, your plan, and you manage in your daily life. So you need to plan that, and all of that goes into a document called a project plan.
Gotcha.
Now, some people call it a project execution plan, or a project delivery plan, or a project operating plan, or just a project plan. No matter what you call it, there has to be a document that contains everything that you need to plan for that particular project.
Perfect. Well, let's get into that. So let's maybe outline and expand on what a project plan contains and how you go about that.
Sure. Let me start by explaining that maybe that every project manager has two clients. So one is the external client that you have, which you typically call a customer, the one that comes to you and says, give me your price for designing this bridge, or give me your methodology and your quote and your tender for doing this piece of work. Now that client, that's one client. The other one is the internal client, the one that is your line manager, your bosses, your senior management of the company that you are an employee in. So, and these guys, the two clients that you have, their requirements are not always fully aligned. Your internal client wants to get in and get out and be quickly done with it and maximize your project's profitability, whereas the external client may not be so motivated to do that. They may want to pick your brain about various options, and they're not too fussed about your challenges and so on. So they may have different expectations. And so with the external client, you have a contract. Typically, obviously, if you're trying to construct a building or a bridge or a tunnel or something, you have to sign a contract with the client that you're going to build this bridge for X amount of dollars and for in this time frame, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z to get there. So that becomes a contract that you have with your customer. With your internal client, you have something called a project plan, which is basically your contract with your bosses. Now, it is not as legal as the contract that your company signs with your customer, but nonetheless, it's quite formal. At the beginning of a job, you prepare a project plan that you have to get the approval of your management for.
Gotcha.
And get the buy-in of your team as well. If you're managing a team, then you have to get their buy-in as well. And the kind of thing that go in there, some of the things are identical to the things that are in the contract that you've signed with your external client, but there are certain things in there that are different. Things that are similar maybe your scope is the same, possibly, maybe the methodology is the same, maybe the program is the same, but maybe not to the same level of detail. Maybe the one that you have with your client is a high-level program or a high-level methodology, but when you're trying to do the work, you detail it out for your own purposes, for your own monitoring purposes. But there are definitely items that are not in the contract with the client. For example, maybe contingencies wouldn't be in the contract that you have with the client. So contingency is something that let's say it's a pocket of money that you allow in your cost calculations to ensure that if something goes wrong, that you can cope with that additional piece of work. The same thing applies to your program. You have to have a bit of slack, what we call a float in the industry, in the program, so that if something goes pear-shaped, something doesn't go quite as planned, then you have a bit of wiggle room, a little bit of flexibility to manage those changes. Because some things you can when they change, yes, you can go back to the client and just say, this is a variation, give me extra money and give me an additional extension of time. But there are times when things change, but you can't go back to the client because they are within your scope of work, and you need to absorb that. And so this is why you have contingencies and you put float or slack in your program. So those things you typically may not mention to your client. Again, project plan may also include things like your risks. Now, what kind of risk assessment do you need to do? How often should you have a workshop for the risk assessment? Maybe the client itself is a risk. So even if you do a risk assessment with the client, you still have to have one internally done with your own team, maybe about the client. And also, so once you've gone through the workshop, the risk workshop, then the risk register will become part of the project plan. And in that register, you have the list of the things that you've identified as risks, what could go wrong. These are the things that could go wrong. And then you may have mitigation measures for them or minimization measures for them. And then you mention who owns it, when do they have to do the things that they've got to do, and also are there any residual risks involved that you need to address. Right. So all of that is sort of covered in the project plan, which may not be covered in the contract that you have with your client. You have to address all sorts of things like resourcing, things like reporting protocols and even variations. How do you handle variations with a client? But before we go on, I must say that many engineers don't like planning. They're go-getters typically. But they're problem solvers. But they're not great thinkers or great planners. So maybe I'm overgeneralizing. Maybe that's not the way. Some people don't like planning. Okay, and they like working in the gray. They like it because they don't want to commit to a fixed outcome. Because once you have a project plan that you've submitted to your bosses and you've got their approval, and you mentioned your profitability as well, your profit, which you agree at the upfront. What profit you will deliver, what cash flow you will deliver for the company. And once they approve that, then you really have to stick to it. Make sure you deliver it, because they will hold you accountable and say, well, you promised that you're going to deliver $500,000 by this time next year.
Absolutely, 100%.
So 1 year goes on, and then you say, okay, where is that money? So basically you're going to be very protective of your project, and very protective of the fees and the costs and so on. And you're going to be monitoring it very closely. So once you have that, you can also, that document, project plan, can help you get your team's buy-in. It's very clear. You share it with your team, maybe even you develop it with your team, and you say, this is what we've got to do. And once you get their buy-in, then it becomes a document that becomes binding on all.
Beautiful.
And your management will come and say, what about this? What about that? And if you don't like planning, if you don't like being fixed to an outcome, if you like to work in the gray, you don't like doing this project plan. So it becomes difficult for the management to know that they're not at risk. So they get nervous about projects that don't have project plans. Sometimes people don't like planning because they see themselves as go-getters, and they get nervous when you ask them to start planning. With every hour that ticks, they feel that they are losing time. They have to get out there and do something,
start building something,
start doing something, or designing something, or getting on with something. Or sometimes they feel that they've actually done it before. I can do this in my sleep. Why do I have to stay here and plan this? And they don't like reporting about it. So, but then they have to realize that, first of all, by not planning, they're putting their company at risk. Because a project plan is a way that the company manages its risks, business risks. And second of all, let's say you've made, let's say 10% profit on the job that you've done 10 times before. But if you don't plan, you don't know whether you could have made 20% on them, or 25 or 30% on them before. So when you plan, you can definitely make sure that you improve your project's profitability.
That's true. And I think as well, the plan is also for all the other stakeholders, external and internal, not just you as the project manager. I think it's, you as a project manager might be able to do a lot of this stuff in your sleep, but the benefit of the project plan is also for all the other stakeholders.
Correct.
As part of the process to look at and review and track and make sure everybody's doing the right thing and it's on the right track and on the right time frame and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just imagine that you have a project plan, and then you decide to leave the company. The company can pick up that project plan, if it's done properly, and give it to the next person as part of the handover, and just say, spend maybe half a day to figure out what he was doing and what you need to do from now on after he leaves, Exactly. But if you don't have a project plan in place, the new project manager has to scratch around and look around, put his investigator's hat on, and try to figure out what he's got to do next,
And have you got any particular favorite applications or software that are in the industry that are good for creating all these plans?
Well, I mean, there are many software.
There would be many.
If you're talking about project planning in terms of a program or a schedule, then yes, there are many software that you could use. Maybe Microsoft Projects, maybe Primavera, maybe P6. There are so many different, even just a simple Excel sheet or Gantt chart. So yes, there are many programs that you could use. If you're talking about project management and a project plan, I typically develop a performer for the company to follow based on what they do. I've actually been doing that, recently as well. So I develop a project plan performer or template for them to follow, so that they can make sure that they address every single thing. When you do a risk assessment, well, it's just a workshop and so on. So yes, there are many programs you could use to, or even your project management software in the market that you could use to help you with monitoring your progress, looking at your schedule and see if how far you're along the, how you're tracking and how you've progressed along this project. Nice. So yes, many software, but I don't have a particular. I don't want to state a preference, to be honest.
Sure. No, totally get it. Yeah, and I suppose if we extrapolate a little and we talk about people doing personal projects, this theory is exactly the same. The project planning should still be there. They should still document whatever it is to a certain degree. It doesn't have to be to the same degree as you might, do a multi-million-dollar project, but you
Correct.
still need to get buy-in from, different people.
Yeah.
And, it just makes life easier, and it makes the whole process less stressful.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. If you don't have it, you'll have a lot of trouble. I
Yeah,
mean.
absolutely. So I'd love to get into, it's obvious, if a projects aren't planned properly, you might be over budget, you might be over time, you might not meet certain expectations, but I'd love to expand on any possibly hidden aspects or hidden pitfalls of not planning a project properly. Anything that you might bring to life with your 30 years of experience that I might not have thought of.
Right. Okay. Yeah, sure. So, I mean, as I mentioned, first, planning is one of the key elements of it. Another one, the second one is monitoring and tracking. You know, I want to say that the key job of a project manager is to deliver the project according to the project plan.
Yep.
So if you don't have a project plan, then you are not managing your project efficiently or properly.
Yep.
So that's the first thing. Then, if you don't have a project plan, then what exactly can you monitor?
Yeah.
You see, so when you get to the execution stage, you're trying to do the job, whether you're designing or manufacturing or constructing something. If you don't have a plan, what exactly are you monitoring? Because the project plan creates a baseline against which you can monitor your progress, right? Or monitor your performance and see how you're doing in terms of cost and time. So
yeah, for sure.
So once you've done that, you've got that baseline for checking your performance, then the next step is to track it when you're doing it. So, and if you don't track things, then you are literally a blindfolded person walking in the dark, searching for the target.
That's
When I do workshops in person, and as you may know, I facilitate workshops on winning new work and on consulting skills and project management for Engineering Education Australia.
Right.
And but these days it's all done online because we want people across the whole country to be able to join. But before, when we're doing it in person or even in other workshops, I typically ask for volunteers to put their hand up and actually go through this little experiment. So what I do is, once somebody volunteers, I place them at one end of the room. Let's say that in a meeting room or a training room, that's about 10 meters long, let's say. Nice. Okay. So I put the person at one end of the room, and I put at the other end, I put a dartboard, or I might draw a dartboard or a target at the other end of the room. And I asked the person to point with their finger towards the target, and can they point to the bullseye of the dartboard, And I tell them, okay, keep pointing. I'm going to blindfold you now. Keep pointing and say, oh, are you sure you're pointing to the bullseye? Yes, we are. Blindfold them. I say, now walk all the way to the other end of the room and make sure that you end up your finger, index finger, touching the bullseye of a dartboard.
Fantastic.
And I obviously have to walk with them because I want to make sure they don't trip over anything and next to anything. So they do that, and you can rest assured that by the time they get to the other end, 99% of the time they are a couple of meters off. They are not going to be touching the target at all. They're going to miss the target by a meter or two, usually. If they're really good, they miss it by half a meter. If they're really good. But typically they miss it by a wide amount, by a large amount. So then we say, okay, now let's repeat the same exercise, but this time exactly the same thing. Point, blindfold you start walking, same thing. But then maybe I stop them after 3 or 4 steps. Maybe after 1.5 meters, I said, okay, continue pointing. I'm going to remove your blindfold now. And I say, okay, now look at the target. Are you still pointing to the target or not? If you're not, adjust it. Might be a very small adjustment. Just make sure you're still pointing to the target, to the bullseye. Then I blindfold them again, ask them to walk. They walk 2 or 3 or 4 more steps. Stop them again, remove the blindfold. Are you still pointing to the target? Yes, we are, or we are not. Let's just adjust a little bit. So you keep repeating that until you get to, let us say, a meter and a half to the dartboard, and I'll remove it blindfold one last time and say, please make sure you're pointing to the right place. And then that way, blindfold them again, then that way you can be sure that they're going to hit the target, or they're going to touch the bullseye. They're going to hit the mark, right? So the moral of the story is that dartboard, or the target, is basically the project plan. What you're trying to hit, your objectives, the target, right? What this is client's expectation. This is what the client expects you to deliver.
Yeah.
And if you go along the path of delivering the project, because once you get into the thick of things and you start delivering things, you just are in the action mode. You're not stopping to look to see whether you're on target or not.
Yeah.
So at some point you have to stop, remove the blindfolds, do your checking and monitoring. Am I still on target? What about cost? What about resources? What about time? What about scope? What about risk? What about staffing? So you look at all of that and just say, am I still on target or not? If I am, okay, let's continue. You continue for a while and then you stop again. So monitoring on regular basis and tracking on regular basis helps you stay on target. So another important aspect of project management is tracking and monitoring whether you're, so you kind of, as I said, you track is your, maybe you carry out an earned value assessment, which is what we do in the in engineering, to figure out how we've performed so far in terms of cost and time, and whether we are on track or not. And if we're not, then we have to think, okay, it's not only about looking back, it's also about looking forward and saying, what do I need to do now? What do I have to do now? What resources do I need? How much money do I need? Do I need more time? Yeah. What do I need to be able to hit the target, right? So you start planning, you start forecasting times, forecasting money and costs and everything. So that's the way you basically that's another important element of project management.
So really, I mean, project management is about, the obvious two are about time and cost, but then it's also about, as you mentioned, staffing, efficiency, repeat business, happiness and satisfaction at work. There's so many aspects to managing a project properly, and so many ricochet or add-on or knock-on effects.
Correct.
It's not just the obvious cost and time.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very interesting.
Absolutely.
And anything else that you want to share with regards to the project management process?
Yeah, I suppose to be able to plan properly and to be able to deliver the project according to your project plan, you need two more things. One is a good set of procedures and policies that to work to, because these policies and procedures that the companies put in place are part of their risk management strategy. Yeah. When you follow those policies and procedures, they can be sure that you are not going to drop anything. You're not going to, or at least they can, to the best of their ability, they can minimize the possibility of you dropping anything.
Yeah.
So if you follow the procedures and policies that they put in place for, let's say, for project management or for consulting work or for anything else or for bidding, then you can sort of take comfort that at least you're following the system that they wanted you to follow, and that way at least it's less likely that you will make mistakes. But these policies and procedures should not be so rigid that to stifle innovation and creativity. So they're more like framework of action. So they need to, yes, follow them, but you should also bear in mind that you don't want to just I understand the assembly line concept that you if you repeat the same thing with your brain switched off, maybe you can make a lot more money. But obviously some clients come to you because you're the creative bunch. You're the you can come up with innovative solutions because so you have your procedures have got to be flexible enough to allow for that as well.
Nice.
the second thing that has to be in place, as you referred to it earlier, is having a team that is going to help you get there. Now, this is what I would call an engaged team. A team that is engaged or committed to the success of your business. A team that goes the extra mile, bends over backward for the success of your business and success of your projects. And a team that is, a good ambassador, or the individuals are good ambassadors for your organization. You want those kind of people on your team. Very often project managers love to work with these teams, but they underestimate their role in creating such a team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and when we talk about company culture, it's driven from the top.
Mm-hmm.
So this is exactly the same concept.
Absolutely. So it is their responsibility to make sure that the morale of the team remains high.
Yeah.
And they've got a responsibility to achieve that, because no matter how good your procedures, if your team isn't committed, then the product is not going to be successful.
Or if they're not coherent, or there's friction, you're just going to get who knows how many problems.
Absolutely. So we all know that having an engaged team, or a highly productive team, is good for business, good for profitability, and it's less stressful to work with them, and life can be quite nice, actually, quite pleasant when you have a very engaged team. But you have to start creating that. And for that, you need to know your team.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that. I mean, what are some of the tips you have for creating an engaged team? Because that's really important.
Well, it's actually not an event. It's more of a process.
Yeah.
I mean, inspirational leaders can come and inspire the group or the team and then go away, but that's not sustainable. They have to create an environment where the team is motivated, they feel appreciated, they feel trusted, they feel that they are valued, they're acknowledged, they
feel empowered,
responsibility. They're listened to, and also they actually enjoy what they do.
Yeah.
Because once you have a happy team, once you have an engaged team, people make better decisions. When you're happy in your job, then you make better decisions. So you need to, it's in the interest. In fact, they say 70% of the commitment of staff is dependent on the interactions with their manager. People don't leave, they say people don't leave companies.
Definitely.
They leave managers.
100%.
And 70% of that is because of the interaction between the manager and the employee. Yep. So they've got to be careful with beware of the shadow they cast.
Yeah. So what do you do when you have a project team that is very highly skilled and everybody's a specialist in an area, and there's one person that is really good at what they're doing, but they're really creating negative morale and starting to derail projects? What do you do? Especially if you're, say, halfway down the middle of the project or something.
Yeah, I'm one of those guys that I typically get parachuted in when projects are in trouble.
Right.
And I've done that many times. One time, I mean, I was working the project director of the project, or the program. It was more than just one project. It was a series of projects called the program, right?
Yeah. So
he had been fired by the client because he wasn't cooperating, and because the relationship at a all-time low. And the team was completely demoralized, and the client was also very upset with the company. So I was brought in and said, "Oh, what a lovely site to be on! A lovely project to be on." But I was brought in and said, "Well, you help the vice president of operations to put this project back on track. Yeah. This client is very important to us, and this was like the 8th year in this program, and it's a 10-year project."
Wow.
So I was brought in and said, "Okay, so what do we do?" So one of the first things that we did was to talk to the team, to talk to the client, and just say, "Look, we're not going to get contractual with you now. We know we've all been contractual about it, but let's just get the job done. Yeah. Now we can worry about contractual things a little bit later. Let's just get things back on track." We had to prove to the client that we meant business, first of all, that we meant to deliver. And God knows how many times I had to sit through a lot of whinging sessions. I had to keep saying, I'm not interested in what happened in the past. I'm interested in the way forward now.
Yeah.
So we are where we are now. Where
Yeah.
do we go from here?
Yeah.
Now, to answer your question, just specifically about the staff that we had a lot of people who were not in a position to work with this client
Right.
because they had enough. They've been working with them for many years. They've been used and abused for a long time.
Yeah.
It was a dedicated team for this particular project. So after sort of telling them that, look, now the decision is that we have to forget about for a short while, forget about getting contractual. Let's just solve the problem because this is a very important client to us. They've given us lots of repeat work and so on. Many people fell in line, and they agreed, and they started becoming, with them as well. We had to listen to a lot of whinging as well, and so on. But there was definitely one. I remember that simply was not going to work.
Wow.
And we kept him for a while, and he simply wasn't going to play ball.
Yeah.
So we thought, okay, let's just move him on. So we didn't fire the person just because we could understand why they were at that position. So, but we had many other projects that we could put him on. So we transferred him out of that dedicated office for this project to another project. And we sent a message to everybody else that, this is
any monkey business.
You're at, I mean, that guy probably didn't last very long as well, because once he was moved to another project as well, he again wasn't very cooperative. So eventually, I think he probably was let go. But I didn't follow that part up. But I think I didn't see him after about a year.
Yeah.
But in any case, we basically sent a message to the team that that we need to, we need to remove all the bad apples, because you need to create that team. And once we managed to convince the client that we were in business, the pressure or the stress of the job reduced, and and I started invoicing. The client started paying our invoices.
Nice.
And they started sort of listening to our options. They weren't just confrontational for the sake of just beating us up. So gradually we managed to bring the client around and bring the team around and work on that and get the team.
And what's amazing is it's, even though it's such a technical field and, managing project is very technical, so much of this is about managing people and interpersonal skills and
absolutely.
managing expectations and people building trust. It's all the basic soft stuff.
Exactly. I mean, my old boss, when I was back in the day when I was living in the UK, my boss used to say that it's what we do is 20% about civil engineering and 80% about human engineering.
There you go. I love that.
It's a lot more about how you interact with others, building rapport, building a relationship.
I like because human engineering. That's great. I love it.
Yes. So this is about the relationships. I mean, the better relationship, the less stressful the job, basically. For
sure. And then you have a team and also a relationship that can manage anything. And it's amazing what you can create together. You have to have that synergy.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's important when you're hiring to hire the right kind of people, when you're interviewing, that you look for the right qualities in the people. That are going to fit your culture. So that's very important. Yes.
And I think in the last, 10 to 15 years, I think, people have started to really realize how important it is to hire for attitude and cultural fit, and not just technical skills and experience. Even though that is important, the other stuff is really important as well.
Absolutely, because if you're entrusting people with your business, basically, if they have to see your clients, I mean, basically, in my work as a consultant, I make money only through delivering projects. Okay, and if I can't deliver well because my team isn't going to play ball, if they're not going to cooperate, then we won't get paid. Our invoices will be late, our payments will be late, and my bosses will be upset. So
you won't get any repeat business. It's not great for for anybody.
Exactly. Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
Love it. And so, Moein, tell us a bit more about how you actually work. How do you engage with your clients? What kind of models of work do you, in terms of workshops and other things? Tell us more about how you work.
Sure. So as you mentioned at the beginning of the interview, I have 4 areas of work. First one is being project management consulting.
Yep.
And for that, I typically work with the owners or the senior management of the company to have a discovery session to determine how they work, how they deliver their projects, what kind of consulting work do they do, what about their staff, how committed are they to their policy and procedures, do they have policies and procedures, do they have a quality management system or an integrated management system, and how good is their quality management system, and so on. And maybe even interview the staff to see how committed they are without actually directly asking them, to see their attitude towards the kind of questions. So I have a very long extended questionnaire that I usually use. Obviously, I optimize it for different companies to suit their requirements. So I have a questionnaire that I take people through. So it's part of my gap analysis. I figure out what is missing, whether it is in staff commitment, or whether it is staff skills, or whether it is policy and procedures that are missing, or maybe they don't have any, or maybe it's the management that is they're not good managers. Maybe they need KPIs, key performance indicators for their staff, and to need to be able to keep them accountable and so on. So I'll figure out what needs to be done next.
Nice.
And I give them my report, and if they agree, then we go and actually do that. So the second part of my business is actually about writing policies and procedures. Now, I typically say that I'm an engineer, registered professional engineer in Queensland, and a chartered professional engineer. And I typically write policies and procedures for engineering firms, maybe consulting firms, maybe contractors, manufacturers, and so on. But I've even had clients who are not within my industry at all. They've come to me and said, look, we hear that you write policies and procedures. I said, look, I'm an engineer. That's okay. Trust me, you can do what we want you to do. It's about, as you say, the softer skills. Maybe it's about the way they behave, around it. Maybe it's about cyberbullying. It's about bullying. Maybe it's about code of conduct. It's about simple things like, how to use a company car and the kind of things that you have to do, the processes to follow. Yeah. So I've written, policies and procedures for all sorts of businesses.
Wow.
So that's the second one. Third one is about training. I mean, I design, I develop, I facilitate training programs, as you know, for Engineering Education Australia, but also I do it for myself as well. And these things can be custom made or customized for the individual company to make sure it is fully aligned with the way they want to operate. Nice. This is the way. So in a way, sometimes people go on generic project management courses, and they are very useful. But if it's not fully aligned with the way the company wants to operate, gradually that training is sort of, your enthusiasm fizzles away, and then you're left with sort of thing, okay, so what's next?
It's got to be relevant. It's got to be more specific to what you're doing.
Yes. So if you make it 100% relevant and specific to the company, then you can actually deliver that and then hold them accountable. Give them some KPIs. Okay, I've taught you how to do this. I've shown you what I expect from you. Use this form, use that form, and this is what you got to do. This is how you should treat the client, and so on. These are the steps that you have to follow. Then now you're ready. So now here's the KPIs for you. And then maybe hold their hands. And the next part comes in, which is the fourth thing that I do, which is mentoring. So if you've done, if I put in new policies and procedures, and I've done the training program for them as part of their orientation for the new and old staff, then we have some mentoring sessions to make sure that they stay on track, and as they transition to the new way of doing things. Or if a new project manager comes on board, there may be super project managers from a previous company, but that, each company does things slightly differently. So you need to be up to speed with the way this company wants to operate, and you need to get familiar with it. And they could use the programs, the presentations that I prepare as the orientation or induction for the new staff.
Nice.
So that's what I do. That's what I do.
And do you enjoy the coaching and the training aspect?
Yes, it's quite good actually. It's quite good. I love it when I can help them. But when I see that light bulb moment,
Yeah,
it's very good. When I see them, when I say something that they've never considered,
exactly.
or they hadn't sort of understood it in this way, so you can see that as a bulb comes on. You can see that the aha moment, as they call
Aha
it.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love
so
it.
I love seeing those kind of things.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Beautiful. And as we mentioned earlier, it's not always the case that when you're good at something that you can teach and train other people in
true,
it. So
true, true, true,
impressive
true.
that you do that because it's another skill set.
No, but I've been trained as well. So I've gone through the train the trainer program. I've even got, I mean, I have my degree and everything, but I've got also got a cert for in training and assessment as well. So yeah, I've been trained to be a trainer.
Great.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
an assessor. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Moen, thank you so much for coming on the show again. It's been great to really dive deeper into project management, but also into teams, resourcing, the
Mhm.
softest the skills needed, managing expectations, and all the other things that you mentioned today. So, fantastic discussion.
Thank you.
If people want to find you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, two ways. They can either go on my website, globalempoweringsolutions.com.au, go to the contact us page and fill in the form, and that way I'll get their email, or they can directly email the company and use support at globalempoweringsolutions.com.au,
Nice.
and then I'll receive their email and I'm able to help and
Perfect.
respond.
And I'm assuming that you're on social media as well. You're on LinkedIn.
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. Yes,
Yep.
people can follow me on LinkedIn. If you go to my personal profile, Moein Varaei's profile, we can connect if you wish, or whoever your viewers can connect, and they can look at my the company's profile as well. And there's a lot of useful tips that I've shared previously, some of which have been with you
Good.
in our previous thing. So those
Great.
videos also on my page as well, the previous ones that we've done.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so yeah, you
Excellent.
can.
Well, I'll make sure that I put all those links in the podcast notes for everybody as well,
Fantastic.
both in audio and video form.
Yeah.
Anything else that you'd like to leave us with before we finish up? I always like to give my guests the last word.
Yes, sure. We talked about, how do you create an engaged team? We talked about that, but I would like to sort of add that there are basically, in addition to money, there are 7 other ways that you can motivate uh,
Wow.
your team. Now, people may be motivated by one
Yep.
or more or all of these 7.
Uh-huh.
Now, so these 7 are quite important for each person to remember. And this is not about just motivating your team, it's also motivating your colleagues,
Yep.
motivating your bosses even. I think it's applicable to any human interaction that
Love it.
you have. How do you build a relationship with somebody else? But obviously, since we're talking about project management and team management, this is applicable to, using that for creating an engaged team
Awesome.
and to motivate them. The first one, but in no particular order, is achievements. Some people are driven by working on the most challenging projects, or most the most with high profile projects, if I
Yeah.
could call them that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is going, they can put on their CVs and say, "Look, I worked on this project,"
Yeah.
and they may even
The
enjoy.
glamour projects.
Exactly. Or they may even enjoy the challenges. Maybe they are driven by wanting to solve something. They're the go-getters. They want to show
Yeah.
what they're made of. They want to prove to the bosses that, I can do this. So, and when you achieve something, when it's done and it's delivered,
Mhm.
they have a sense of accomplishment that, it's wonderful that I was involved and we did this, and they can tell their tales of, how they achieved that. Maybe tales of woe initially, and then their success stories as well. So this is one of the reasons, one of the ways that, if that you can put them on such a project, then that might motivate somebody to do their best and even stay with you as well.
Right.
So second one is autonomy. Some people love to be left alone. They're the lone wolves. They are happy for, they might say, just don't micromanage me. Don't breathe down my neck.
Yeah.
Don't look over my shoulder. And I think they're right. You shouldn't be doing that anyway. But sometimes people think even the smallest amount of management, they get upset. They think that you're micromanaging them. Whereas you may feel that I'm not micromanaging, I have to do this. So you have to find the balance between what is actual micromanagement and what you need to do.
Yes.
So you need, so you don't want to micromanage people. That's sort of, in a way, that's disempowering, so you need to find out a way that, you can empower them to give their best and give them the autonomy they deserve, in a way, because I think not everybody's ready for full autonomy. I mean, initially when you first start, you are fully supervised, and gradually that supervision reduces until the time that you can actually hold your own and you don't need any more supervision, or maybe at some point you'll be just nominal supervision. But if it is your project, you can't abdicate, you can delegate. So as long as you delegate effectively, that's fine, but you can't just abdicate. This is still your work.
That's right.
So you still need to manage the people who are doing work on your behalf. Others, they may be motivated by safety and security. As long as their jobs are not in danger, they don't feel that they're going to lose their job anytime soon. And they may feel that, yes, the salary is coming in every month. They maybe I might get a spot bonus every now and then. I might sort of even get a pay rise once a year or something. They're happy with that thing. But they may stick around. Now you may think, okay, people who work for the government agencies, may stay there, but doesn't mean that they're going to be fully motivated to give their best.
That's true.
But then you have to find maybe the other things that motivate them to give their best as well. So this
could be a combination of a few of these things.
Correct. Absolutely. So you got to be careful. You don't want to make it too comfortable for them to feel complacent. You don't want to be complacent about it. The other thing that people could be attracted to, or they could be motivated by, is having a sense of belonging. They like the social aspect of their work. They like the people they work with. They enjoy that, and they like the banter and the camaraderie and all that. But again, you have to be careful, because I've actually seen this get out of hand. People start joking around in the office, and before you know it, you actually, this is disturbing everybody else and disturbing the flow of work. So as long as it doesn't interrupt anything, or then that's fine. You want people to be happy at work. You want people to be joking and it being in a stress-free environment. But there is a limit to that. You can't allow that joking around to interrupt or impact the efficiency of your work. So you got to be careful with that as well. So next that people are motivated by is self-esteem. They like to be thanked, praised, acknowledged, and all that, and that's fine, as long as this person is wired this way.
That ties into confidence as well a lot.
Yes, absolutely. And so you're basically trying to empower them, but you got to be very, very specific about the way that you praise somebody, either privately or publicly. It has to be very specific. Like, for example, if somebody's pulled in an all-nighter and they've delivered a fantastic report at the end of the job and without being late, you can thank them and just say that this person really worked very hard, worked all night last night and delivered this report, and the client is super happy with the quality of the work that he's done. So thank you very much, John, for doing this report, and maybe do something else on top of that. Maybe if a job has been successful, maybe throw a lunch or something for the team. So at least that way you can praise and thank the team or individuals for the appropriate things, so people know exactly what they're being thanked for.
That's great.
The other thing is like power and authority. Some people are motivated by being in charge. They want to tell other people what to do.
Status.
So it's I suppose you have to be careful that the power can go to some people's heads. You got to be careful with that. And so unless they are ready, and these kind of things, you should approach it with caution, I would say. You have to delegate slowly to make sure the person is ready for this, for the power you're giving them to be in charge of something. So, but yes, I'm motivated by that. As long as you know that, then you can see what plan you should put in place to get the best out of this person.
Love it.
Another one is, which is probably the last one, is fairness. Now, or justice. Some people are motivated by seeing that the company is fair to them. They like a company that's fair. Now, or on the other aspect, conversely, if they feel that there is favoritism going on, and no matter what they do, no matter how well they perform, they will never ever get the promotion they feel they deserve.
Yeah.
And then they're not going to stick around. They're going to walk. Or even if they don't work because they can't work for whatever reason, like there are no jobs out there, or they haven't found the right job yet, then they're not going to give you their best. So you need to be sure that you are being fair to everybody. So people are motivated by these things. And the way the next step is, once you know that people are motivated by these things, is to actually get to know your staff, understand the combination that they have in terms of what motivates them, right? And try to create that environment that gives them what they need, to the extent that you can.
That's right. It also gives them the freedom to express their needs.
They feel heard. They should want them. Yes, they want to feel heard.
Yeah.
And even if the answer is no to the suggestion they've made, as long as they feel heard, and you go back and you take it seriously and say, I've considered your suggestion, but maybe not right now. Maybe in 6 months' time, maybe in a year's time, we'll come back and revisit this, but maybe not right now. Exactly. Because at the moment we're trying to do X, Y, and Z. So as long as they feel heard and they feel valued, then they will stay. But that requires you to maybe spend time with your staff. Try to understand them. Try to maybe even understand their hobbies and their interests,
and their goals and their aspirations.
Maybe even their children's name or something.
Absolutely.
So at least that way you are trying to figure out how to empower that person, how to motivate that person to give its best for the company. Because the likelihood is that if you care for their needs, the likelihood is that they will also care for your requirements.
Absolutely. As well. Yep. It's a two-way street.
The two-way street, absolutely. So get to know your staff.
Very important. I mean, those last 7 points alone are a whole podcast in themselves. We've really covered a lot of great ground, and a lot of those insights can be used in all facets of life, both personal and professional.
Absolutely.
But Moein, really appreciate coming on the show. We dove very deep, and we've got some great insights to share with the community. And I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been a pleasure to chat with you as always. And I wish you the best of luck. But thank you again. And for everyone out there, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And we'll see you very, very soon for another episode of the podcast. So bye for now. See you next time. Thanks, Moein.
Take care. Bye for now. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Thanks again for joining me for another episode of Playing with Perspective, the Suspended Animation Podcast. If you would like to join me as a guest on the show, I would be delighted to collaborate. Feel free to buzz me on 0414 659 800 or email me on darren@suspendedanimation.com.au. I'm always on the lookout for great guests who can share their stories and expertise with my community. Also, if you have been thinking about putting your own podcast together and not sure where to begin, look no further. I run a really simple 3-part podcasting course, one-on-one with me, where I walk you through the entire podcasting journey. You will end up with a fantastic new podcast to start sharing right away. Feel free to get in touch to discuss further. But for now, though, have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time.